It's Henry Kissinger's 100th birthday. Yes, the man who served as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State to two Republican presidents, Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, the author of more than a dozen best-selling books on foreign policy and grand strategy, and a man who's been described as arguably the most famous and controversial diplomat of the 20th century, turns a century old on Saturday, May the 27th. In fact, this past Monday, Kissinger blew out the candles on his 100th birthday cake on the Economic Club of New York stage in front of an adoring audience. And remember, it's not just conservatives who worship at the altar of the Henry Kissinger. Establishment liberals, top Democrats even, have fallen over one another to associate themselves with the great Kissinger, to heap praise upon his ginormous intellect and historic achievements. Barack Obama's administration honored Kissinger with a special award. Hillary Clinton called him her friend and said she relied on his counsel. Samantha Power, the self-styled champion of humanitarian interventions, went to a baseball game with Kissinger. And Joe Biden, when he was a senator, toasted Kissinger, although, to be fair, he hasn't yet invited him to the White House like all of his predecessors have done. But look, here's what I want to do to mark Kissinger's 100th birthday. I want to talk about some of the many, many people around the world who didn't get to live till 100 or even 60, 70 or 80 because of Henry Kissinger, because of his support for brutal dictators, brutal regimes, brutal wars and war crimes. Let's start where else? In Southeast Asia. The war in Vietnam, which Kissinger may have ridiculously won a Nobel Peace Prize for ending, but which he prolonged and escalated in the first place, including a secret and illegal expansion of that bloody war to Laos and Cambodia. It was him. Thanks to a report released by the Department of Defense in 1973, we know that the National Security Council, headed by Henry A. Kissinger, approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids in 1969 and 1970, as well as the methods for keeping them out of the newspapers. To quote Kissinger himself while instructing an all-out air assault on Cambodia, anything that flies on anything that moves. As Human Rights Watch noted in 2001, United States and South Vietnamese aerial bombings on Kissinger's watch left approximately 350,000 Laotian civilians and 600,000 Cambodian civilians dead. And just this past week, The Intercept reported, on the basis of US military documents and eyewitness accounts from Cambodian survivors, that Kissinger is responsible for more civilian deaths in Cambodia than was previously known. And yet, Kissinger has never apologized for what he did to Laos or Cambodia, instead defending those bombing campaigns as legitimate attacks on North Vietnamese forces and saying he failed to see any moral issue with them. Still, as the late, great Anthony Bourdain once wrote, witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. Then there's Argentina. In 1976, a coup d'etat overthrew the elected president and replaced Eva Perón with a military junta. That junta then launched what's been called the Dirty War, the hunting down of political dissidents, of socialists, trade unionists, students. And they launched it with the approval, encouragement even, of Henry Kissinger. We know this thanks to declassified documents, which The New Yorker reported on, writing, 2 days after the coup, Kissinger was briefed by his Assistant Secretary of State, who warned him, I think also we've got to expect a fair amount of repression, probably a good deal of blood in Argentina before too long. Kissinger replied, whatever chance they have, they will need a little encouragement, because I do want to encourage them. In a meeting with the Argentine foreign minister 2 months later, Kissinger advised him, in the words of The New Yorker, winkingly, quote, we are aware you are in a difficult period. We understand you must establish authority. If there are things that have to be done, you should do them quickly. Somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people are believed to have been arrested, tortured and killed in Argentina's dirty war. As The Guardian notes, many bodies have never been found. No birthday parties for them. Then there is East Timor, which was invaded by Indonesia in December 1975, an invasion that led to the death of at least 100,000 people over the next 2 decades plus of Indonesian occupation, according to a UN-backed Truth Commission. On the eve of that invasion, literally the day before, Kissinger, alongside President Ford, met with Indonesian dictator General Suharto and basically gave him the green light to invade. To quote Kissinger's advice to Suharto from a declassified document, it is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly, but that it would be better if it were done after we returned to the United States. Then there's East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, which was attacked by a military-ruled West Pakistan, now just Pakistan, in 1971, a conflict that killed hundreds of thousands of Bengalis and displaced millions. And yet, as Princeton professor Gary Bass has shown, based on declassified documents and White House tapes, Kissinger stood stoutly behind Pakistan's generals, supporting the murderous regime at many of the most crucial moments. And when a US diplomat on the ground in what was then East Pakistan sent a cable to Washington warning of a genocide, Kissinger called the man a maniac and had him dismissed from his post. I could go on and on and on, sadly. I didn't even get to Chile and Kissinger's support for General Pinochet's coup there, or his betrayal of Iraq's Kurds. Kissinger, of course, has for years denied any criminal culpability for any of this. But he did cancel a trip to South America in 2002 after Chile opened a probe into the Pinochet coup. As human rights lawyer Bruce Broomhall told the New York Times back then, quote, "I think it's clear that Kissinger is now one of many, many officials who have to think twice before they travel." As historian Greg Grandin of Yale has argued, a full tally hasn't been done, but a back-of-the-envelope count would attribute 3, maybe 4 million deaths to Kissinger's actions. So where is the accountability, the reckoning? Where is justice, dare I ask? In his 2001 book, The Trial of Henry Kissinger, the late Christopher Hitchens called for Kissinger to be prosecuted for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for offences against common or customary or international law, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnap, and torture. And yet Kissinger this week celebrates his landmark 100th birthday with not an arrest warrant or war crimes tribunal in sight. So, congratulations, Henry. Pat yourself on the back for living such a long life, and as a free man, too. It's a shame so many millions of victims of your policies can't say the same.